Hey, it's Caggiano here for Premier Guitar. In this video, we're discussing all things strumming. I'm going to start off by talking about strumming technique. I'm also going to show you some of my favorite ways to make your strumming more creative. Let's jump into strumming technique and how to get a great sound with our strumming hand. When we strum, we want to make sure that we're using both the wrist and the elbow. We want a really nice balance between movement of the wrist and the elbow. I can lock my wrist and just move my elbow and still strum through all of the strings. But if I want to make the strumming sound a little bit smoother, I can move my wrist as I'm moving my elbow. So having a balance of the movement of the elbow and movement of the wrist is going to make our strumming sound really smooth and really nice. Now you may notice when I'm strumming, the other fingers that are not holding the pick are out like this. They're not tucked away. Now everybody's strumming hand looks a little bit different, but this is what I'm more comfortable with. The reason why I have my fingers out and not tucked away like this is because I always want to have the least amount of tension possible. The position of the hand that has the most amount of tension is when we put our hand into a fist, when I form a fist. And the position the hand's in when I have the least amount of tension is when I relax the hand completely and my fingers go out like that. So for me, if I want to be as relaxed as possible when strumming, I relax my body first and my fingers naturally fall like this. Again, everybody is different with their strumming hand, but that's what works for me and that's what I'm most comfortable with. Let's talk about rhythmic subdivision. One thing that is so important to understand as rhythm guitar players is rhythmic subdivision. Once you know what time signature the song is in, we can then subdivide the rhythms to create a strumming pattern. The most common time signatures we see in music is 4/4 and 6/8 time. For this example, I'm going to use 4/4. I always recommend when creating strumming patterns for songs to start simple and then make the strumming patterns more complex. If we're playing a song in 4/4 time, the best place to start is to find the quarter note. The quarter note would be the natural pulse or the natural heartbeat of the song. It's basically where we would be clapping if we're clapping along to the song. So if I have a rhythm that's 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm first just going to start out by strumming down strums on the quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Once you have a solid rhythmic understanding of your quarter notes, then add in eighth notes. I like to first start out with eighth note down strums. So if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, it's now going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Once we feel solid with our quarter notes and our eighth notes, let's now check out the 16th notes. 16th notes are basically if I take my eighth note and I divide it in half. So if my quarter notes were 1, 2, 3, 4, and my eighth notes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and here come my 16ths. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Notice for 16th notes, I'm doing alternate strums. So here's my 16th notes. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Here's quarter notes to eighth notes to 16th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Now let's get into the fun stuff. Let's see how we can make our strumming even more creative. Whenever I'm teaching a student how to become creative when it comes to strumming, I always recommend starting on an acoustic guitar. Now, nothing against the electric guitar. I love playing with electric guitar with all the tones and effects. But when you're trying to become more creative on the acoustic guitar, you're limited to what the acoustic guitar has to offer. So we sometimes need to be even more creative. If I want to be more creative on the acoustic guitar, I have to figure out ways where I can add color, I can add dimension, I can add texture, and I can add different dynamics. That's what we're going to look at right now. A beautiful thing about the acoustic guitar is you can find different color depending on where you're strumming on the strings. The closer I get to the bridge, the more metallic and chimey the sound gets. The closer I get to the sound hole or even the fretboard of the guitar, the rounder and warmer the sound. Listen to the range of color here from all the way back here to the bridge to all the way up here on the fretboard. So beautiful. I recommend taking one chord. I'm just taking an E chord like this, and just have fun exploring the color. It makes that one chord sound really interesting. Another way we can add different color, dimension, and texture to our playing is to strum certain groups of strings. When I pluck each string individually, I'm plucking a different note of the chord, obviously. So if I want a different sound or texture for some different strums, if I strum some of the lower strings, then the higher strings, I'm going to get different sounds. This is far more interesting than just strumming all the strings at once. You could even pair that with the technique we just learned by moving forward and backwards. Maybe I pluck the bass notes by the fretboard and the treble notes by the bridge. Or opposite. So many creative options with that. Now here's a way we can change the dynamics with our strumming. One of my favorite ways to do this is a rake on down strums, where I am raking through the strings. Now you can do this closer towards the bridge, which I love. Covering the sound hole, or even towards the fretboard. Sounds so juicy and nice right there. Another one of my favorite techniques is palm muting. This really changes the dynamics. Now all I'm doing for palm muting is I'm basically resting the palm of my hand literally on the bridge. Now depending on how much you want to mute the strings, you can lift it up slightly. You don't have to be covering all the strings. I think it sounds great with down strums. Now when I'm palm muting, I have limited movement of the wrist, so I'm basically doing that with my thumb and index finger. You can even pair palm muting with some more open strums. Since we're talking about muting, let's just talk about straight up muted strums, where I'm playing a chord and I got some muted strums in there. So what I like to do here, where I just place the fingers on the strings, and when I strum through, it mutes everything. If we want to make our strumming sound a little more musical, we can emphasize certain notes of the chords. A very common way of doing this is plucking the bass notes or root notes of the chords. Now I've just been playing basically an E chord to an A or an A sus chord. So if I want to emphasize some notes, maybe I'll just pluck the roots or the bass notes of the chords, the open low E string for the E chord and the open A string for the A chord. Now, it doesn't always have to be the root note or the bass note. It could be any of the strings. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of combine most everything that we talked about with just these two chords and see what it sounds like. Strumming sounds beautiful, partially because this tailor is absolutely beautiful. But hopefully these new techniques will help you understand how to make your strumming more creative and have more fun as a rhythm acoustic guitar player.